Aloha mai kako. I'm Lila Mower, president of Kokua Council, one of Hawaii's oldest advocacy organizations, representing and advocating for the most vulnerable among us. Before we start, I'm sad to announce the passing of Kokua Council's beloved and highly respected Windward Chapter President, the Reverend Sam Cox. I don't see Helen here. When Helen joins us, I will ask her to speak about Sam. Today's meeting is the third in our series on crime and corruption in Hawaii. Today, Kokua Council has the privilege of meeting with Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney Steve Alm, our third visit in recent years. Judge Alm has initiated innovative programs such as HOPE, the acronym for Hawaii Opportunity for Patient with Enforcement, Weed and Seed in Chinatown, and more recently, Safe and Sound Waikiki. How effective have these programs been? Has crime been reduced? Has public safety been enhanced? Judge Alm, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you. Great to see you folks again. Yeah, there's a lot going on right now. I just got off the phone with a Civil Beat reporter who's doing a story on asking, have we lost people, you know, in this great reduction in, I guess, employees nationwide and locally. And I said, yeah, we have. The Mayor Blangiardi says there's supposed to be 11,000 city workers and they've got 8. We've had a couple of extra challenges. When I came in January of 2021, we were the lowest paid government agency that does trial work. Neighbor islands were more, AGs were more, Corp Council. And so I really take my hat off to Mayor Blangiardi and the City Council because they have given us 2 sets of raises that as of September 1st, we will now be competitive with all of those folks. And that's really important. Nobody joins this office to get rich, but you got to be adequately compensated. And to give you an example, the first year we lost 6 people to the neighbor islands because they could pay more. And then in the 2022 session, the legislature gave the Attorney General's office $3.3 million for raises, and we lost 15 there. And I think people join this office, most of them join it to help victims, do the big trials, public safety. But there are a number of others where it's just a job, and we're going to lose them. But I'm really happy with the people we have. We've hired a lot of good new ones, and I think we're winning more cases than ever. Almost twice as many, or a little over twice as many in the domestic violence arena. We're doing office-wide training that hasn't been done in the past. When we did it in May of 2021, it was the first office-wide training here since 1987. So deputies need that kind of training to be effective trial attorneys. I told the Waikiki Neighborhood Board when I was running for office that if I ever got elected, I'd like to try to bring the weed and seed concept, back. The seed part kept going like in Chinatown, but the weed part pretty much died when I left. So we were able to reinvigorate it there and bring the weed part back. And same thing in Waipahu and Ewa Beach. But Waikiki presented its own challenges, and that's Safe and Sound Waikiki. I don't know if you were able to show one of these statistics, but the stats in Waikiki are really good. They compared the first quarter of 2022. Okay, well, first, let's hit that since it's up there. Part of the challenge always as a prosecutor is that people always think crime is going up. And I think with social media, with the press, with everybody else. So to give you an idea, and this isn't an average survey, right? It's people that read the Star Advertiser and want to respond, but 82% saying crime is everywhere. As a matter of fact, crime is down in almost every category, 2022 from 2021. And that's what this chart is. The only one that, can we do the other one? That's the only, that's still Waikiki. Crime index, there you go. Everything is down, with the exception of murder. And murder is always a tricky one because the numbers are pretty small anyway, but it can be a variety of things. And 2022 numbers, that's 25, that is about what it was pre-COVID. You know, Hawaii is really lucky. You know, it's a tragedy. And I should say that first. If you're the victim of a crime, stats don't mean anything, right? You know, but and these numbers are overall for the Honolulu Police Department. So murder went up a little bit, but everything else, whether it was rape, whether it was aggravated assault, burglary, motor vehicle theft, it's all down, most of them by double digits. So overall, it's good news, but the public may not see that. And as a practical matter, crime has gone down like for the last 25 years in Hawaii. The crime rate was about double in the 90s as it was, you know, now. So, but the perception is always there. So what we got to try to do is work with the police department, be as effective as we can, get them to be as effective as they can, because one unexplained, they have what's called a clearance rate. And that means they've arrested somebody or we've charged, sent it on to us. It's about half now what it was 25 years ago at HPD. So that's an apples to apples comparison. So we're trying to work with them to figure out how to get more cases effectively charged and more cases resolved. But part of what we're doing is focusing on some of the highest crime rate areas to try to reduce crime. And Waikiki is certainly an example of that. So if we could go to the Waikiki slide, what they did was they compared the first quarter of 2022, you know, January through March, and then we started Safe and Sound on September 6, 2022. So we'll have a press conference down there shortly for the 1-year anniversary. But you can see whether it's assault is down 15%, burglaries down 25%, drugs and liquor 82%. And I think that's people walking around with bottles of beer or other stuff where you know this is going to lead to trouble, both as a weapon or just, you know, people being under the influence. Robbery's down, theft is down. The only one that I think went up that isn't a part of this is disorderly conduct. And I don't have a problem with that because that means if people are causing trouble, HPD is arresting them. And so to me, that's a good one. But these numbers are really positive, showing where, and a lot of the action takes place between the Moana, where the police substation is, and the wall, and from Kalakaua down to the water. That's why they've changed the closing to extend it more hours overnight. And we're working with HPD. Recently, the city hired Matt Levi, and he works with very experienced police officers. So now they're walking the beat in that area. And the beauty is they don't have to respond to 911 calls because that's what pulls officers away from, you know, walking a beat. And those folks, Matt's folks, aren't in a car. It's two very experienced officers, very well trained, you know, typically like SWAT or crime reduction unit. And then they're just walking along in that area. They can talk to people, they can make referrals, they can handle anything that comes up because they're very experienced. They're used to dealing with criminals. So I think it's really good news. We'll keep on with that in Waikiki. You know, as I've told the press, I'm not running. I'll make an announcement in the spring, but I'll probably have a fundraiser this fall, so you can draw your own conclusions from that. But there may be other communities down the road that could benefit from this kind of an approach, because what it does is it gets us working really, the safe part, the weed part, it gets us working really closely with HPD and identifying, you know, potential targets, people that are causing the most trouble, like we're doing the habitual property offender, you know, people that go into these stores every day and steal, you know, and a lot of the stores don't want to arrest them. They don't want to confront them because they're afraid of lawsuits and having their employees get hurt. So a guy like Lawrence Smalls was the first one we did almost a year ago, and he had 161 convictions. he never got more than credit for time served, which is 2 or 3 days in jail. So the criminal justice system, the court system didn't scare him at all. And we discovered almost everything he stole was alcohol. So he'd walk into a ABC store, and they're really welcoming, right? They're really wide open. He'll go in there and grab a bottle of vodka and walk out. So, $17 worth or something, but it causes prices to go up. It causes problems. So he was, we worked with HPD. He was arrested for a habitual property offender, which is a felony with a mandatory year in jail. So it's giving the community a break from him, but then he should be sent to a treatment program to deal with his alcoholism, because until he deals with that, he's never going to stop stealing, and we got to look at the big picture. I don't know if I've mentioned it to you before, but when we're doing weed and seed in Chinatown, we knew the crime wasn't as bad, but the homeless problem was much worse. And so we started a program called SUDA-FAST, which stands for Substance Use Disorder Assessment Fast. And the whole idea being, if these homeless guys in Chinatown sleeping on the street, I think virtually 100% have mental health, drug and alcohol problems, or both. And so unless you're dealing with those underlying behavioral health issues, you're not going to get anywhere. You can arrest them, but they're going to go right back to the street. If you can get them sober and actually back in the world, there's a chance to keep them off the street. So in the last couple of years, HPD has arrested 150 chronically homeless folks in Chinatown. And we've gotten some into treatment. But that's one of the chief reasons why Chinatown looks a lot better than it did 2 years ago. Back then, River Street had one homeless person after another, living in a tent or just sleeping out. Now it's a lot cleaner. There's still a few issues there, but we're going to try to keep pushing this. And we just got a grant for a certified substance abuse counselor. So we'll have somebody full-time devoted to this. So if a homeless person gets arrested, and it's almost always for drug possession in Chinatown, this person can go to OCCC, do an assessment, and then line them up for treatment. And then the public defenders and us sign a stipulated order, the judge signs it, and we get the person out of jail and into treatment as soon as possible. So we'll keep doing that. We're open to it in Waikiki. We just haven't seen that many people. And I think because if they're lying there, the police talk to them and they go somewhere else. It's not the same as in Chinatown. But we're really happy with the way it's been going in Waikiki. We expect it to continue, because once you have success, it breeds more success. And the Waikiki bid has been great. Paul Kosas is head of it, the Business Improvement District, and they already do things that you could only hope for in a sound or in a seed capacity. They have two different groups of folks. One is the safety patrol. So they're every day in Waikiki are going around. They wear bright yellow shirts. They're kind of eyes and ears for HPD. If they see anything goes wrong, they're on the phone immediately. That's a safety patrol. But they also have a cleanup patrol. So they're out there cleaning stuff up, making it look as good as possible. And that's every day too. So that's the kind of stuff that's really key. But working with the Waikiki Business Improvement District, we've just hired the coordinator for Safe and Sound in Waikiki. So she's going to be great. We'll introduce her at the 1-year anniversary press conference, but she will coordinate efforts between residents and, sound kind of activities. There's some already going on in Waikiki, but more and more can happen. It's like when we did it the first time in Chinatown, we set up a Head Start program for young women. So either they could learn how to, get a job working there, or their kid could be there while they're off working at another job. And we talked to the sisters at St. Francis, and they gave us a 2-bedroom unit in Kukui Gardens to do the Head Start program. We started an after-school sports program at Kaiulani Elementary School, because that's when kids are going to get in trouble if they don't have anything to do after school. So and Kaiulani is a great school, but every kid that lives with their mom at IHS, that's where they go to school. So it's, they've got a challenging situation. But they had more than 100 kids in this after school program every day. And by the time I left as U.S. attorney, I think there were 48 geographic exception requests for people who live somewhere else to have their kid go to Kailani across from Mayor Wright Homes. That kind of says it all about how good that school became, because it could be made, the area could be made a lot safer. But as I was explaining to the civil beat folks, this office always loses people, gains people, but I was elected with the mandate to try to clean the place up. There was a cloud of corruption over it for the last several years, and it was really unfair to a lot of the deputies and clerical workers. They did nothing wrong. They're just trying to, do it the right way. But there were certain problems that I had to take action on. And I didn't want to go into detail for the media, but I said, there was somebody doing sex harassment, he's gone. Egregious discovery violations, gone. Never prepared for court, gone. We got to really make this place as good as it can be, and we are rapidly headed for it. So we're hiring a lot of good new deputies, and now that we're competitive from a salary standpoint, we're even getting people from private practice to consider it, because they may have gone to a private firm, but the reality is you're never going to get into court, because there's so few civil trials as it is. And if somebody wants to hire a law firm, they want the named partner doing the case. They don't want a new associate, right? So we're getting folks, if you want to get trial experience, this is the absolute best place. And they have a prosecution clinic and the defense clinic for Richardson students to go into traffic court. I think the first semester there were 16 in the prosecution clinic, 4 in the defense clinic, then 12 and 3. This semester it's 9 and 4, because we're getting the message across to Richardson that this is the place to learn how to be a good trial attorney. Because as a prosecutor, you have to set the case up. You have to, you have the burden of persuasion, but also the burden of production. So you have to call witnesses. You have to try to construct the case. Much more difficult than trying to poke holes in it. Both are important, both make the system work, but I think this is the premier place to learn that. And now that we can pay them competitively, I think we'll keep getting good applicants. We'll keep getting good folks in the private sector. We had 12 interns this summer, most of whom are going to be rising third years. Well, several have already applied to be law clerks for next summer. And this is a really motivated group. Part of the fun of the summer interns, they go to visit different areas. They went to Halava prison to see what that's like. They went to the courts. They went to the police training academy. And when a sergeant was showing them, they got to ride in the cars when they're on the track. They got to do the simulation, whether it's, good guy, bad guy type of thing. And then I think a sergeant said to him, well, and this is a taser, and any of you want to experience it, just laughing. I think 8 of them volunteered to be tased. And I would have passed. Thank you very much. But they wanted to see what it was like. It's a very enthusiastic group. And one of the, things that I think isn't the only thing, but we are winning more cases, guilty as charged, than ever before. It's certainly, before the pandemic. In the domestic violence arena, misdemeanors or felonies, we're winning about twice as many guilty as charged. So I'm really happy about that, because I think I have a real preference for hiring people at the front end. So they go to misdemeanor court with Flo Nakakuni. She's division chief there. So they can learn to work together, work as a team, get the right ethics. If you bring in lateral people, they're going to take positions that people could otherwise rise to. So I think I've hired maybe 3 laterals since I started, but everybody else has been at the front end with Flo Nakakuni to learn the business of being a good prosecutor. And frankly, part of it is just, you got to have the right work ethic. To be a good lawyer, to be a good prosecutor, the day typically doesn't end at 4:30. And that's a challenge with some of our younger folks these days. But it's something that needs to be emphasized, that they're lucky. This is one of those jobs where there's tremendous satisfaction. You're helping to keep the city safer. You're helping victims get closure. So, we're all lucky to work here, and we want to pass that on. I would like to comment on the anti-corruption bills at the legislature. One of our bills did get passed for, these new crimes. Part of it is because Flo Nakakuni was the U.S. attorney and a long-time assistant U.S. attorney before that. Tom Brady, who I worked with here at the prosecutors and then hired at the U.S. attorneys, he was there for 26 years. And then I was the federal prosecutor. We know how effective that system is for corruption. So we looked at their the statutes that we could use over there. And that's the ones we were in close contact with Judge Foley and his committee, and one of our bills with new crimes got passed at the legislature. The only disappointment I have, and we really lobbied them about it, is to make it really effective, there has to be mandatory prison time. Because I can tell you, when news came out that Senator English and Representative Cullen had been busted, those of us who had worked in the federal system knew that that meant that a couple of years before, somebody else had been busted for that, typically for that type of crime. And then he or she tried to work down their prison time by cooperating against English and Cullen. And sure enough, that's what happened when Mr. Choi's name came up. But the only reason he agreed to cooperate was when he got arrested those few years ago, he knew he was going to federal prison. He knew that was a certainty. And so it's at that moment that he's got to decide, or she in the case, do I want to cooperate or not? And so that's why he agreed. In the state system, because there's no mandatory time, if Mr. Choi got busted in the state system, he's going to assume he's going to get probation, in which case he is never going to cooperate. He'll keep his mouth shut, he'll plead guilty, he'll get sentenced to probation and carry on with his life. Because, it's hard to testify against other people. It means you can't work in our political system again. But if it means several years in prison that you can get cut down, they're going to do it. So, we're disappointed in that. We're hoping they'll change that in the future. We will keep lobbying for it, because it's that initial thing when they first get arrested. That's when they got to make that decision to cooperate or not. But it's better than nothing. I'm happy to have it against. We will try to do some cases. We hope people will call us up when they see corruption. We recently charged a case where a person tried to bribe a DPP employee, and the employee, to his credit, turned the guy in right away. So he got indicted, and we'll welcome more cases like that. We are aggressive about this. I can't speak for my predecessors, but we're aggressive about, prosecuting political corruption or anything else. The rule of law means a lot to me. And that means that nobody is above the law. Nobody gets a pass, whether my predecessor is pending trial in federal court. So, nobody should get a pass, whether it's a prosecutor, a police officer, an architect, or anybody else. If the law has to apply to everybody. So, I could keep talking here, but you're a well-educated group. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I'm happy to start taking those, and then I can carry on if there's a break with stuff.
Certainly. Well, Judge Arnold, I have my question to start this for you.
Sure.
Talking about the Standards for Improvement of Conduct, Act 131, Senate Bill 228, the one that seeks to eliminate fraud, indicates that the use of false statements, claims, and misrepresentations in matters within the jurisdiction of the three branches of government is a Class C felony.
Yeah.
Does this include false testimonies during legislative hearings?
Now, that's a really good question. I had not thought of that. I'm going to have to look that up. It would seem it would fit in, right? But you'd have to prove that it's a false statement. I think the most common way this is used, like in the federal system, is lying to the FBI, lying to DEA. So now if they lie to HPD, that's a separate crime.
Yeah,
Or on a written,
we've heard misrepresentations or misstatements made in legislative hearings, which determines how a measure is going to go through the legislature. And if legislators are persuaded by false statements,
yeah,
that's harmful to the rest of us.
I would check that out.
Thank you. I would
Yep.
really appreciate that. I see Kathy's hand up. Go ahead, Kathy.
Good morning, and thank you for your presentation. I'll start by saying something that happened this morning to my husband. Now, I'm going to categorize us in the Kapuna category, even though I don't like to admit that very often. He got a phone call, it says from US government, and it says your social security card has been compromised. Now, we're smarter than the average bear, so we did not respond to that.
Yeah.
There are so many people out there that would respond to something like that. What is there anything we can do state-wise to get these guys and shoot them on sight or something? I don't know. Just kidding. But it's so aggravating, and it happens all the time.
I know. And it happens because it works.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're absolutely right. You're smarter than the average bear. You know, the government is never going to call up. We had a recent notification, First Hawaiian Bank, that somebody was sending something out saying there's a problem with your account. Could you contact us? It's the same kind of thing. No legitimate person is going to call you up or text you or email you and ask for personal information. But that's why our elder abuse team tries to speak to as many groups as possible, just to warn people and get the word out there that don't ever give personal communication, because it's going to sound really legitimate. I'm sure, like this person who called your house. And, you know, if they get a pattern and they can identify it, and the FBI can try to figure out who's doing it, but it could well be from any place in the mainland or overseas. It's you know, I wish there was a better answer to it, apart from people just being as educated as they can, never to give out personal information.
Yeah, and now they're using 808 numbers, and you know,
Looks
darn well they're
legit.
not. Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks very legit. It's just
No,
scary.
it is scary. Well, good for you. You stayed on top of it.
Thank you.
So there's a couple of chat emails that were in here for a little while. Lila, would you like me to read those? So Dale, you have one in here. So it says, Hawaii, unlike the state of Georgia, does not have a racketeer influenced corrupt organization law. We need that to cope with organized white collar crime. Can Honolulu Prosecutor Office request for that from the state legislator? That's one of the questions.
Yeah, and that's a great question, because it is used federally here. Like the case against Mr. Miski now is a RICO case. And so we're looking at different statutes to see, because, and especially because Tom Brady did a RICO case. My first deputy, the original Tom Brady, did the RICO case against these two gangs at the Poly Golf Course. You may remember, there was shooting, people were killed. It was two rival gangs to run security for these illegal game rooms. Flo Nakukuni also had done a RICO case. So it's a good tool, and then testimony against one person, because it's a conspiracy, can be used against everybody else. And so, yeah, we're trying to look federally to see what can we adopt here. You know, the state doesn't tend to do wiretaps. We're trying to figure out a way to do that more, because that can be, especially now, nobody thinks they're going to get wiretapped, right? Whether it's federal or state, but it does happen, and it's tremendously powerful evidence when you can do it. You got to be careful. You got to follow the rules, and it's tremendously labor intensive. You have to have an agent or a police officer listening in like 24/7 on a particular phone. So it really is labor intensive.
Okay, thank you. And then Jackie Hong asks, are domestic violence cases tracked and included in the data collection?
Yes, and we changed our policy about misdemeanor domestic violence cases, because when I started here for 30 years ago, the police weren't arresting people for domestic violence. They'd go to the house, they tell the husband usually to sleep it off and, get out of here for the night. And they wouldn't prosecute it. So there was a nationwide push to prosecute those cases. So there was a mandatory arrest policy. Well, what went along, and that exists to this day, but what went along with that is the mandatory no drop policy by prosecutors' offices. And I think the idea is if you had a case, you should proceed with it. Well, over the years, it caused a lot of problems because victims, usually the wife or girlfriend, not always, knows how dangerous it is if she testifies. She is in the very best position to know that. Is she going to get beat up if she testifies? So we looked around and discovered it was us and a couple small counties in Georgia that still had a rigid no drop policy. So we talked to our victim counselors, we talked to Nancy Creedman and the folks at the Domestic Violence Action Center, Angie Mercado at the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, former prosecutors like Lynn McGivern and Loretta Sheehan. And we said, we're looking at transitioning to a more victim-centered approach. So if the victim absolutely doesn't want to testify, we're not going to force them to do it. We'll move to dismiss the case without prejudice, then we'll bring it back, like if in 6 months the guy does it again. And then we can do the new one or the old one, but we keep track of it. And partly it was that, partly we're doing office-wide training now, but we are getting twice as many convictions, guilty as charged, in the domestic violence arena than happened pre-COVID in this office. So it's much more effective. The victims will know we will listen to them. And if they want to pursue it, we will be happy to do it, take it to trial, hold the guy accountable. But if they don't want to testify, we're not going to force them to do it. And we've got a great division chief, Tiffany Kael, and then she's the division chief there. And then Kristen Yamamoto is head of the domestic violence misdemeanor jury trial section, and Michael Domingo for juvenile offender. But they work really well together. I'm really proud of that whole division. It's just great.
Okay. And then
I think I saw a question about how long it takes for these federal cases. Why are they taking so long?
Yeah.
There are a number of reasons. When the mailbox case went to trial and former Chief Kealoha blurted out that, the defendant had a prior record, that caused a mistrial. The office here then recused themselves from it because they were involved in putting that case on trial. So Flo Nakakuni, really made a pitch. Let's get an experienced corruption prosecutor. So San Diego, Michael Wheat, that's where he's from and his team. So the problem is they have to fly in and spend some days and then go back because they've all got families there. They've got other cases they're working on. It's never as efficient. A lot of you are professionals. If you went to another state to try to get something done for a few days and then come back here, it really slows things down. And I think we've all been frustrated with it. I think Michael Wheat senses our frustration, but he's not here partying. I mean, he gets here Monday, and he's gone Friday, but it's work. It's work. And unfortunately, it's taking a long time. And when you have new attorneys come in, I think the case against Mr. Kaneshiro is set for next February. I certainly hope it goes to trial then. It's been a long time coming. And, I'm not sure exactly where the case with the other three folks is, but I hope it happens soon. Donna Leong and the other two folks. I hope that happens as soon as possible because we need closure with this. It's just better. And I think people should feel comfortable that the office is essentially back on track. We're doing normal things, working with the police department. They have our trust, prosecuting people, trying to, hold people accountable and keep the community safe. And there were some problems before, but those are gone and the people involved with it are gone and we can move forward. My number one job is public safety and we're trying to keep focus on that.
Okay, great. Dale had one more question, but Greg has had his hand up for a while. So Greg, why don't you go ahead? Is that okay, Lila?
That's okay. Dale can go first. That's fine.
Oh, well, it just says regarding testimony before Hawaii legislator on proposed bills, as people are not under oath to tell the truth, they can talk nonsense and even lie. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it does happen.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. The other question is a very good one. Is there a way to hold people accountable for doing that? Now, you're going to have to prove that it was a lie.
Right.
It's just like with all these indictments against former President Trump. I mean, this is going to be a fascinating thing, but prosecutors can make an allegation. It's going to be up to them to bring witnesses and actually prove it beyond a reasonable doubt in court. I think one of the advantages there, like our state court system, is it'll be televised, the case in Georgia.
Yeah.
The federal government, the court system is really behind the times. There is no reason they don't, have their cases, filmed as well. Absolutely no reason. I don't know if they're afraid of making mistakes and having people see it, or it's just hidebound. It makes absolutely no sense, because I don't know how long it's been going on here in the state, like 25 years. But I can tell you from being both a prosecutor in some murder cases that were televised from beginning to end, and being a circuit court trial judge where we had cases televised from beginning to end. Trust me, after 10 minutes, people ignore it. They just get into it. And if people think they're going to play to the camera, they're playing to the jury already. So it's really not it doesn't make any difference. And for the public, it's so important for them to actually see people on the stand testifying. Both sides get to ask them questions. I think it was Justice Cardozo who said cross-examination is the greatest engine for truth ever devised. That when a witness is up there and both sides get to ask them questions, you really flesh it out, and the jurors can often make up their mind whether it's credible or believable or not. And especially with the level of mistrust in the country, I'm really glad the Georgia case, and now that woman, I guess one of the defendants asked for a quick trial and the prosecutors agreed. So it looks like the first trial may well go in October.
Yep.
And that will be televised, and it'll be the same witnesses that will be in a later, with the other 18 people sometime in the future, but everybody will be able to see what the witnesses have to say. So it'll be, I think, really good for the country to actually see it all out there in public.
Yeah, they said the Georgia one in October and then the insurrection one in March. That's what they said on the morning edition this morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the prosecutor may be counting on people wanting to make deals to cut it down from 19. I guess one guy's going to go in October. There may be another one or more in October, because the logistics of 19 would be unbelievably difficult. You'd have to have all 19 at the table. You'd have to have their attorneys. It would have to take place at the Blaisdell or something. I mean, if it was here, it wouldn't be. I think I did one with maybe 4 or 5, gang members at Halava, and it was a challenge because you have to have space for them, their attorneys, and then law enforcement folks from the Department of Public Safety to make sure people don't escape or assault people or something. So logistically, it would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead, Greg.
Hey, aloha, Prosecutor Alm.
Hi there.
So yeah, my name is Greg Misakian, and I currently serve as the second vice president of the Kokua Council, and I'm also the Subdistrict 2 vice chair of the Waikiki Neighborhood Board. And I've seen you speak there, so I saw you not too long ago. You came and gave a presentation. I thank you for your efforts to reduce crime and prosecute bad actors. But I'm also the treasurer at my condo association since March of this year. And I have serious concerns regarding misconduct here, which I can only describe as rising to a level of a federal RICO investigation. These involve, and I've got this written down because I don't want to miss the concerns I have. So these involve financial misconduct, improper
By other
collection.
board members?
Yes, by the board and the management company, by specific board members and the management company. These involve, and others, site manager.
Yeah.
These involve financial misconduct, improper collections of monies not owed, kickbacks, illegal gambling, possession and use of stolen property valued at thousands of dollars, pay to play, unlawful retaliation against whistleblowers and those uncovering malfeasance, and other concerns, including a board member impeding an EPA investigation into lead paint, which was being improperly removed in common areas by a company who was not certified to do the work. There are also numerous large projects that were started and now stopped that did not have the required permits from DPP. There are violations of federal, state, and local laws, statutes, and ordinances, and collusion to cover it up and deceive the owners. Those involved are numerous, but of most concern is one public official and another individual I believe you saw on the other side of the bench when you were a judge. I would like to speak with you after this meeting at some point this week to discuss further, and I'm asking for your assistance to help address my concerns and concerns of others, I think, that have some, other associations or people, owners that have similar concerns. I have substantial evidence that I can show you, and it's irrefutable evidence. So I'm just going to ask, can you let us know what your office could do or how we could engage with your office to assist us, myself and others that have similar concerns?
Okay, the way it's going to start in this and other things is call 911. And when an officer comes down, you start explaining it to them and they'll assign it to a detective. And that's how all of these investigations start. Right? That's where you need to do it, because whatever it is, it's starting with 911. Presumably they'll call somebody from the white collar division. And if you have all this documentation, they will love that because they'll have a lot to go on to begin with, as opposed to just hearsay or rumor. And if you're willing to testify, that's a huge part of it. But that, honestly, that is the way it will start, is calling 911. And it's non-emergency. They'll ask you that question, right? If you've called 911, but at the same time, it's criminal. And then when you speak to a dispatcher, just briefly explain what it is, and that will get the process started. So, and then hopefully it will lead to something. We'll be happy to, have one of our white collar crime folks assigned to the case to work on it with HPD. So if you've been keeping track of stuff, that's wonderful. And if you have documentation, that's what we need to prove that kind of case.
Yeah, I have documentation, witnesses, a lot of substantial evidence, but how does it get over to your office? And what if I have concerns even regarding HPD?
Well, the HPD officer, a detective should get assigned, and then they would be calling our white collar section.
Okay.
So
they should contact your white collar.
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, as long as there's you've got something showing that there's something to this. And I know you're convinced it's irrefutable. We got to prove that, but that's exactly the kind of stuff we need for people to step forward. In one case, success will lead to another case. And I know this is a hot topic around the country. In Hawaii is condo boards and misconduct. I've seen articles in the paper recently about that. And maybe it was your building, but it's a challenge, but that's the place to start.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, well, I'll take a turn. So when we first talked about doing this, you had some concerns about legalization of marijuana, and you and I had a little bit of a discussion. And I've kind of done just a whole literary kind of Google search. I don't know if you know, but I'm on the Bobby Benson Center board, and I've worked drug alcohol centers, and I lived in Washington working for Seattle Mental Health when Colorado and Washington legalized marijuana. You'd mentioned a lot of problems. I tried to Google kind of what problems are going on. I wasn't able to really locate problems. What I've actually located is the marijuana industry. Legalized marijuana industry is the fastest growing industry in the nation, and is predicted to make as much as $76 billion in the next several years. My concern, and it probably ties into yours, is not, I'm going to go two directions here, is the illegal marijuana that continues, that now is being laced with fentanyl and meth and all kinds of just very, very dangerous stuff, which seems to be competing with legal. We have 40 states that have legalized at least medical marijuana, 23 recreational. Many countries have legalized it.
Yeah.
And the medicinal kind of values, I was a counselor, I worked with, I even saw new research that has me kind of curious because I have arthritis. And it's to help with arthritis. There's this CBD and there's the THC and there's what's helpful for what. So the medicinal kind of value seems to be pretty strong, but that our nation seems to be an addictive kind of nation, which is always bringing in substances. And so, I mean, because we went from, in my time in mental health, we went from crack to meth to opioids to now fentanyl. And before that, I started with Valium. I had a lot of clients that were addicted to Valium. I'm 47 years in the field.
Yeah.
So at what point do we actually legalize marijuana in a way that it works for everybody and we actually deal with this illegal world that's out here that's creating so much trouble?
Well, first, before I go further, we're going to have an event tomorrow.
Oh.
At the Marriott. And Jerry Gibson, the general manager, is hosting the whole thing. And there's a national group called Smart Approaches to Marijuana.
Wow.
And the president of that is flying in from the California. But because the legislature had passed, the Senate.
The Senate, yeah.
Because marijuana has been decriminalized here. So it's a ticket, civil, it's not in the criminal arena. And we have medical marijuana, like you say.
Well, we were the first state to actually pass that in 2000.
Okay. And they're still working that out. There's still problems with that, but it's a work in progress because some people do, and when I was a judge, if somebody had an old motorcycle accident, I'd much rather them smoking weed than Valiums or not Valium, OxyContin, Vicodin, that kind of stuff. But because of all this, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, we started doing a lot of research about other states. Like Colorado has had legalized weed for 10 years. And they're having a host of problems, more fatal car crashes, more emergency room visits, more little kids getting edibles and calling the poison control center. And so what we're trying to do is we've invited all the legislators and others. And if any of you want to come, send us, if I can get the name and email address, we will send you an invitation today where you can just register, just so we keep a count. And one of the things that really surprised me, but is kind of alarming, is when I talk to our visitor industry, they say the Japanese tourists, Korean tourists, if Waikiki smells like weed all over, they will stop coming. And if that happened, our economy would be in huge trouble. This isn't reefer madness, which is why it can't just be law enforcement, because people think, oh, you guys don't like fun, or, there's not. But when the weed of years ago was 2 or 3%, and back in the day, and I think for a lot of legislators, they're thinking back to high school, they smoked the weed, what's the big deal? But now it's 20, 30, 40% THC. It's a totally different drug. And so, we may be better off having our medical marijuana operation get solidified, but not go the other route. If it's going to lead to Japanese tourists not coming, Korean tourists, other Asians, because in those countries, it's treated the same as heroin and cocaine, and it's really serious. But I also think we may lose families from the US mainland. If Waikiki looks like Party Central because you smell weed everywhere, I don't think that's a good look for us. And families may decide not to come here anymore. So anyway, it's to try to get information out there. We have experts coming. People can ask questions of them. Scott Miskovich, I think, is a doctor you folks probably know, well-respected. He's going to be speaking. Phil Bostert is the executive director of the Hawaii Association of Independent Schools, all the private schools. Keith Hayashi is the superintendent of schools. He's going to come here. No, he was hoping to come, but because of Maui, he's going to be over in Maui because they have all these schools closed. And I think part of the problem is I don't think there's another state that relies on tourism to the extent we do.
Well, Seattle does, and it isn't a problem in Seattle. And
Right. I don't think they
I
rely
lived
on
there for-
tourism like we do.
well, we
No,
downtown.
no,
certainly-
they have Google, they have all sorts of industry that we don't have.
Well, I'm just telling you, we don't smell like marijuana everywhere, and we legalized it the same time that Colorado did.
Right. I'm
Hasn't
just
been the
worried
issue.
about what would happen here.
I guess my question though is, when do we actually deal with the illegal dealings that are going on, so that legal recreational could actually happen in a safe way?
Right. Well,
That's
what they
more my
found in every state that legalized is the black market's bigger than ever.
Yeah.
Because you get more use when you legalize it of all
That is true.
ages. And you're telling your kids, hey, stamp of approval. And you know kids are going to tell each other, hey, they made it legal. There's nothing wrong with it. They're just trying to say we're not old enough to handle it. We can handle it. So that's the problem, that the illegal market, and like you say, there have been cases of fentanyl being sprayed onto marijuana leaves. It's dangerous, but people are
Yeah.
going to go for the cheapest
Yeah.
way to buy it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a difficult issue for some adults. It is recreational. You know, they haven't had any problems for years. I don't think they think what's the big deal. But for many others, it's more mental health problems. It's more
Yeah.
fatal car
Yeah.
crashes. I mean, there are two sides to this.
Well, I would go one step further than, so mental health wise, and the other 3 times that you've been with, a couple times you've been with us, you know, I bring this question up all the time. So only 34% of folks here in Hawaii are accessing mental health, that need mental health. Are we improving in that area? Because most of them are going to jail, taking up jail time, and in prisons and in jails, they're not trained to deal with it. And so we've got a
Absolutely
huge issue.
not.
Oh, and they also don't have to take their medication when they're in jail, which makes it even worse.
The one area that I think has great potential is we participated along with Department of Health, Judiciary, Public Defenders, and a group of us went to Miami because they have a really good jail diversion program for seriously mentally ill folks. And 10 years ago, their homeless count was 8,100. And Miami has 2.4 million people, so it's more than us. Last year, it was 1,100. And I think this program is a part of it. So what happens is if somebody gets arrested, and if somebody's got a serious mental illness, it's likely to be a misdemeanor or a petty misdemeanor, disorderly conduct, or an assault or harassment or something. Well, what they're doing, instead of getting them into the criminal justice system, they're diverting them to another program where they're getting mental health treatment. They're getting them housing. They have peer specialists to relate to them. The potential is huge for this. So we're trying to make it work. We're trying it in district court. We're trying it in circuit court. Because in the even putting a lot of resources for misdemeanors and petty misdemeanors, because that's where the serious mentally ill are going to run into the criminal justice system. Maybe a dual diagnosis program like Poilani or Habilitat, or Hinamauka. But in the meantime, they'd be living in a group home or living in a structured environment, the Department of Health. Now they're going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So there's a lot of pressure put on them. I think we'll see what's going on and then go back to the legislature, maybe to get more funding for the Department of Health, because they're the ones doing a lot of the heavy lifting. In Miami, there are 23 people that work for the court just doing this work. And they have a tax on every restaurant in Miami that grosses more than $400,000 a year. And they kept the hotels out of it, but that's what's helping to pay for this effort. So we're hoping that can be a way to keep the mentally ill out of the criminal justice system.
So in Seattle, we started with a 0.1% sales tax for offenders to keep them from resurfacing. Seattle Mental Health, actually, the agency I worked for, provided a lot of the service, very similar to what you're talking about.
Oh, that's great.
So Steve has their hand up, but on not really, but really just on chat. But go ahead, Steve. What is your name? And
You're muted.
You're muted.
Hi, this is Edwina Spallone. What's being done with white collar crime?
I'm
Edwina.
Christine. Did you call C?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm doing Christine. We'll get to you.
Okay,
There's
thank
Greg,
you,
and there's
thank you.
also, there's a few hands up here. Go
May-
ahead, Christine.
Okay, thank you so much. So I have a question. I have been defrauded by a contractor on a insurance claim. I filed a complaint with the state. The state hasn't helped me. Long story short, after 2 years, I filed a complaint with the BBB, and the BBB got my money back for me on Hawaiiana Management Company under the Federal Debt Collection Practices Act for twice sending me letters for money not owed. And then Destination Maui charged me for 3 months duplicate payments of $1,600 that took me again 2 years to get my money back. Something needs to be done. I also had my car stolen from my gated community, and it's these management companies and HOA services that I pay $1,000 a month for. There's no option to not be part of that. I do not want to be part of this. No other property owner on a national basis with the equivalent in the property value is paying $1,000 a month in frivolous services that I don't want.
Now, who are you paying that to?
I'm paying to my HOA close to $1,000 a month, and I've had 2 management companies that Hawaiiana has been cited for violating the Federal Debt Collection Practices Act twice on me for $550, and Destination Maui billed me an additional 3 months, the same amount for about $1,600. But this is common practices of these management companies and HOAs. I have a letter from Senator Keith Agram, who sent to the Consumer Protection Bureau on Hawaiiana saying that, you know, I was concerned because the letters threaten non-judicial foreclosure on your property. And as I said to Lila, if I wouldn't have been here in the state, they would have foreclosed on my property. I know they would have done that. So here I am, a home property owner, and for years I'm fighting, defending my property rights. I'm tired of it. I never had the option of opting out of HOAs or management companies. This is egregious. It needs to stop. I want to testify to the Senate to create. We don't need more amendments, bills, because that's the problem. The rules, the declarations, nothing is followed. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then I'm under siege by the board of directors who in 2022 allowed a landscaping company to go from that was $250,000 yearly. They voted in a $500,000 contract for the next 5 years that upped my rates 34.42% for 2023. I have no say, no rights. That's management companies. And Steve, I want to ask you a question on insurance fraud. I really need help because the state has not helped me. And this is what's going to happen in the state of Hawaii. I had an insurance claim, a water claim, and what happened was the insurance company, State Farm, paid the contractor, I'm going to call him. I paid the contractor $5,300. The company has not refunded me in a year now my $5,300. I have written a complaint. Nothing is done. I need somebody in the state to help me against this contractor who defrauded me. It's unbelievable that you can get no assistance when you are a crime victim. I don't understand why and then State Farm, after I filed the water claim on a no-fault claim, sent me a non-renewal notice. I had to then seek out new insurance within a month where I was declined. I almost had to file to the Hawaii State Emergency Insurance Fund because nobody would insure me. My homeowner's
Christine,
policy.
we're we're gonna try to keep our questions down to a couple minutes. Do you have an
Okay,
answer
okay.
for her, Steve? Thank you.
Well,
On the fraud,
Yeah,
Yeah.
have you,
contractor fraud and the insurance company not helping me. I'm a policy holder that pays dues. What do I do to get the state to help me? He should
Have-
not be practicing.
have you gone to talk to DCCA?
Yes, I have.
And what did they do?
Nothing.
Okay. How about HPD?
I'm on Maui. Yes, I filed a report.
or
It's
Maui
listed
police.
as a felony.
And did they follow up on it?
I'm hoping they're gonna follow up on it.
Okay. I mean, as I was saying before to Greg, that's how, if it's fraud, that's how these cases get started, is talking to the police. So, and I think if you call, Andy, the prosecutor on Maui, he would probably say it has to start with Maui police. That's how these cases get started. And hopefully, it sounds like you've really been put through the ringer.
I have been.
God.
It's been a nightmare on this island. My car's stolen in a gated community, fees that I'm forced to pay $1,000 a month for services I don't want.
Did
and
you
then
talk to Senator?
hostage to all
Keith,
these benefactors?
Sorry, have you, since the letter was written by, the Maui Senator Keith Arguin, had you gone to talk to him?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
I'm getting ready to send Senator McKelvey, who Lila recommended, my exhibits with the management companies.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk to them about the insurance company, because it's going to happen to all people in this state. Once they file their claims from Lahaina, they're all going to be dropped, and they're all going to end up on Hawaii's emergency.
Well, now is the time to be talking to your reps and senators, and the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And you're very articulate, and you've got a whole list of issues. But I would go talk to them about it, just because, like you say, you went through this, and you can see what's going to happen to these people that have lost their houses on Maui.
Yes, it's
But
it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I can
And
imagine. Jeez.
It's just a nightmare.
Yeah.
When it comes to money, and you have all these benefactors, including the state, that doesn't help you, everybody's hand is in the pot. It needs to stop for ordinary citizens. They should not be bankrupted like this.
Yeah. Well, good luck with your rep and senator, because they're the ones who have to make this happen if we're going to change the laws.
Yeah. This is a good time because it's between sessions. So this is a good time to talk to them. This is the best
Okay.
time, actually.
I'll be banging on doors again.
Best of luck. Yeah, that's what you got to do.
Yeah. Okay, so next we have Greg, followed by Pulama, and followed by Lila. That should pretty much take us there, unless anybody else has one. Go ahead, Greg.
Thank you, Rick. So I have two things. They're just statements, and maybe you can do a follow-up with some thoughts. So first of all, I do echo what the last person said regarding some of these issues with insurance. That's happening here also. So that's a separate concern that I share. Regarding management companies, Associate Hawaii, I haven't had a chance to file yet. I've had some tragedies in the last few months, but Associate Hawaii is our management company. We actually voted them out last year at our annual meeting, and we did not vote them back in this year, but nobody's taken action to replace them. And that's a board fiduciary duty. There's collusion with that management company. Associate Hawaii was not licensed, unbeknownst to me, until actually knowing on the day of our annual meeting, when I was elected to the board, that I didn't know they were not licensed from January of 2023 through April. And I think it would have gone longer, but there was a RICO complaint, and I'll raise my hand to say I filed that, regarding Associate Hawaii. And that's still
You
pending.
mean RICO at DCCA?
DCCA, correct.
Okay.
So the concerns I have are that I've had no follow-up. We have a conflict of interest at DCCA. We've got Mr. Richard Emery, who, as far as I know, still does work for Associate Hawaii. as far as governance of what they do for, some title he has of governance.
And why is that a
And
conflict?
because he's on the real estate commission,
Ah,
big conflict.
yeah.
And then my understanding is it's a misdemeanor every day and a potential $5,000 fine, which would be every day. They also gave improper information to our association regarding the issue or when their license was actually restored. And I have that firsthand from the RICO investigator. Now, I haven't filed a criminal charge yet, and I'm planning to most likely this week. As I
Yeah.
said, I've had a lot going on. The first question I have is how would I do that? And then I just want to throw the other thing to you so you can maybe make a mention of that too. DPP, you mentioned earlier that you are aware. I know you're aware because I see it on the news too. There's people being prosecuted. There's another gentleman that actually just, was cited or is in the news for bribery at the desk. And I think they're both architects. I have evidence to support, and I've spoken directly with Don Takeuchi Apuna, that the inspectors that came to our building were looking the other way. So when permits were actually required, they ignored it. And that's just a concern. But I want to know for both of these issues, how do I file a criminal complaint against Associate Hawaii? And how do I file a criminal complaint or concern regarding DPP or the inspectors at DPP?
Again, it's calling 911 and getting it into the system. And then when they come for pick one of them and talk to them about that. But then ask the guy, should I bring up this other issue with DPP on a separate 911 call, or do they want to look at both of them?
I would do them separately because I don't want them intermingled, and that causes.
And that may be better. But honestly, I know it sounds frustrating and people are used to thinking of 911 more for emergencies, but the way the police department is set up, that's how these things get started.
Can I walk down to the substation? I prefer not to have officers and police cars come to the building and then I have to go down to the lobby. And so I can just go to the substation, the Waikiki substation.
I'd go to the substation, and then call 911 and say you're at the substation, because the officers there are not going to treat this. They're going to say call 911.
All right, sounds good. And I'll let the next person
I give you
go.
guys credit. This, it takes whistleblowers and people willing to, point out problems. It sure sounds like there are huge problems with these management companies or mismanagement companies. And
they've been going on a long time with many people here, actually.
Oh my gosh.
So we could do all day just on this.
Yeah.
And very helpful. Thank you. And then Pulama is next. Are you still there? Yep. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I kind of resonate to what the last gentleman had said. Our management company is Hawaiiana. Our board president dictates over everything at Pro One Condo. It's Jane Sugemura. But what do homeowners do with collusion and white collar crime? We had an employee steal money purchase personal items on the AOAO account, but I've called HPD to press charges. They are saying that because it's an association, the board has to press charges. Well, the board president took it upon herself to have the guy pay it back, not bring it up to the rest of the board members for investigation or to see or to prosecute this person from doing it to somebody else. And also, collusion. We have a project manager who used to be an executive of our management company at Hawaiiana Management to do a huge project that failed on every level. And my board president wants to use him as a project manager for something else again. What am I to do? I've called DCCA and they gave me every excuse as to why I wouldn't be able to file a complaint on the employee that purchased personal items. I even called the real estate commission about mismanagement of funds, hoping they would investigate, but nothing. And the people that are Hawaiiana or Jane, our board president, is using They're all attached to that CAI. We use Richard Jonathan Billings to do our project reserves, CAI. We use Rachel Glanstein, the parliamentarian. Jane has had on her Think Tech Hawaii on there, telling people to use her services. It's sad, but there's a lot of retired and income medium associations that are just getting screwed out of our money from being mismanaged. Quick pro quo.
Well, Steve, this could go on
Thank
quite
you.
a bit. Yeah.
Boy, I'll say, but have you had any success talking to your senator or your representative? I mean, this should be the kind of thing. If you've tried to talk to DCCA and they're not doing their job, that would seem like the place to talk
Well,
about it.
Let me read what Dale wrote, and then we'll go to Lila here, because it'll be along the same lines. Property management companies, the big ones for sure, are allowed by the state to manipulate HOA elections in order to keep tight hold on their clients. Legislators love the donations, protecting them from accountability. These guys even shut out of offices. And then folks from the association come walking out from meetings with the legislators. And with that, I'll go to Lila, who can take it a little bit further. Hang in there.
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm not going to take it further.
Okay,
However,
You could.
thank you, Doug, for taking our questions. This is kind of related to the condo industry. We have been, for the lack of a better word, preyed on by association attorneys that are hired by boards. And I know of a number of owners who have submitted complaints to the Office of Disciplinary Counsel, but nothing happens. And then there are a couple of instances where we noted judicial misconduct, where a judge made a determination which was contrary to the law. What do we do?
Wow. Well, there is a council on judicial misconduct, and you can make a complaint there. If you look at the court, the court website, it'll have a link there. I would bring it up, as well as when a judge is up for retention, you can write letters to the Judicial Selection Commission, because they have to vote on whether people would get retained or not. And they've become more active over the years. It used to be a rubber stamp kind of years ago, but they have removed judges. It's often for, unprofessional conduct on the bench, putting people down and being rude and all that kind of stuff. But, if you can prove that they are absolutely not following the law, that's important too. It's, and ODC is, the lawyers are the only ones who manage to get themselves not covered by DCCA, and they have their own, not surprising, their own system. And it's hard, because if you complain there and they don't do anything, there really is no recourse. So I know I can just hear how frustrating this is, as well as these conflict of interest. I'm seeing that people are on board member, they may be board members, but they're also working at other parts of government. But this is the kind of thing to get, in numbers, to complain to your legislators to look into this, that, unless they do something about it, the system is really rigged. It sounds like against individuals who are on, and trying to get these boards to answer to them.
Steve, if you could, I put a comment in the chat. I think that's what you were just looking at. Could you read that out loud to everybody? Because that's a fact, and I have evidence to support that.
I can't see it now.
Oh.
I'll read it. So our
Rick,
board president works as an attorney corporation counsel for the city and county of Honolulu, and on numerous occasions has discussed legal cases and depositions he's working on in our owners forums at the board meeting.
Well, I would register a complaint with the head of Corp Counsel.
thank you.
I mean, seriously, especially if they're transcripts or something else about it.
Yeah.
That's serious. We try to talk to our deputies about not doing anything like that. And some people don't know, and some, it's just improper. It's improper.
So Judge, this is a very big part of Kokua Council, and it has been for, I've been on here 7 years, and it existed before I came. This is a long, very involved, many people, and it spins, great suggestions. And folks have been very connected and working together on trying to get things through. Lila, did you finish everything you wanted to ask? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna move to Doug, and then Pulama has another comment, but Doug, you're next.
Sure.
We
Hey,
got-
thanks for being here and doing this. We're near the end of the time, so I thought I'd leave this till near the end. We've been talking up to now about how to prosecute our way to a better society. And I want to take you out of the prosecutor role, and the prosecution is based on the laws. The laws are based on the values of the community. What kind of value, and I ask this because there's a trend, not only on the mainland, not limited to the mainland, where the law should be based on the values of a particular race or a particular religion. What do you think we need in Hawaii? What kind of values do you think we need to make the laws that would make Hawaii a better place?
Well, it's, I don't know if it's laws as opposed to just putting people in office who have good values and will respect things. I'm really worried about Maui. They've had fights about water rights forever. And, decisions may be made fairly soon. I mean, we could have another Mauna there. This is complicated stuff that has been, there in place for years. But all I can do for me being a prosecutor is try to make, our number one job is public safety, but it's trying to be fair. It's trying to uphold the rule of law. And those are values I think that we all can relate to, that we just have to try to treat people fairly. But if we can prevent crime from the beginning, that's even better. We can't solve our problems with prosecutions. We're there after the train wreck typically, right? A crime has been committed.
Maui is a typical example where the laws are made, the conflict in values are between a very commercial commodity system to one that might value other things. So I was just wondering.
I was concerned when I read that 70% of every dollar on Maui comes from tourism. Yep. They have 30% of the tourists in the state. I don't think I quite realized that. My wife says she goes over there for work, and the rental car situation looks like one of these big mainland cities. There are and now a lot of them are sitting there unused, but
well, they're 85% service industry on Maui.
Wow.
It's the latest stat. So.
Well, and I know people have tried to diversify, and you would think in this day and age of remote working, and I know we have a number of people working like for Google or working for Microsoft who live here. So there is some of that, but boy, trying to come up with a diverse economy. But it's treating people better. It's being fair. Sometimes the law can hold people accountable and make them act better. But what you're saying is really more profound, that, how do we make our education system better? How do we make it so parents can spend their time with their kids and read to them and get them to be good citizens? And because, when kids get in trouble, you ask, what are they doing out at 1 o'clock in the morning, running around with their friends, right? It's a real challenge. I sure wish I had more and better answers.
We're down to 8 minutes. Lila, do you want one last question, or what do you think?
Yes, Pulama, you're next, but if you could try to limit yourself to 2 minutes. I'd like to close out the meeting with an in memoriam for.
All right, I just had that my board president, being that she's an attorney, she uses her email server from her law firm office. Is that legal? I and other homeowners have called and made complaints, and she still does it.
Well,
Thank you.
if it's a private law firm, she may be able to do that. I mean, if they're willing to accept it and they know about it. If it's a government one, that's absolutely inappropriate, and she should not be using a government email or a government phone for that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much. Judge Alm, if you don't mind, would like
No.
to close our program. Thank you very much for all the information you gave us, answering our questions, listening to our concerns. But at this time, I'd like to ask our Kokua Council Director, Helen Wagner, to say something regarding our Reverend Sam Cox. Helen, you need to unmute yourself.
My name is Helen, and I have the honor to say this and ask for your prayers for because recently, August 17th, one of our very important board members, Reverend Samuel Cox, passed away, and he has been known to. He's the director of Kipa, Home for Youth in Need. For 23 years after retirement, he had achieved various awards of many years of as a pastor. He has survived by his wife, Babs Ripple, who is also a reverend, and she has been serving on as a superintendent for the Hawaii district. Services are pending at this time, and we really want to support the wife in prayer as this transition in their life. But mainly we want to give recognition and respect to the passing of Reverend Samuel Cox. His ministry has touched many of our lives, and he's really was a good role model. And even, you know, in honor of him, we just have a few moments of silence as I say a little prayer. Dear God, thank you for giving us the opportunity to work with Sam and use him as a role model of quite high quality and a person who was always fighting for people's rights, at the same time not condemning, but encouraging prayer for people to find a way. Dear God, just thank you for putting him in our lives and paths. Thank you. Amen. But one of the things I wanted to bring up was that recently I came across where I heard the United States president say, we're going to get Trump one way or another. And that's how a lot of whistleblowers are afraid, because the system is set up. We do have judges, we do have lawyers, we do have a system where there's, and senators, that a lot of this is covered up or slow walked, or one way or another, there's retaliation. So do we go to the police with when these retaliations come? I was at a women's luncheon meeting where we had the governor's wife speak, and she encouraged us to report these things. So you say that we go first through 911? Is that where it starts? Oh,
Judge, you're muted, yeah.
okay.
Sorry. If it's, you know, if you think a crime has been committed or somebody has been threatened or something else, by all means, call the police. If it's, you know, people's opinions about other things, and it's voting and, you know, getting involved in the political system, I think that's what people should do. The more involved they are, the better we are.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for being here and taking the time.
Oh, you bet. Happy to see you folks
I'm
again.
glad you won. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge Alm. We really appreciate your very valuable time.
Ah.
And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Happy to see you folks. I'll look forward to a return visit.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Mahalo to everyone who joined us. Please stay well. Kokua Council invites you to join us again next month, Monday, September 25th. Please look forward to our meeting announcement. E malama pono, ahui ho. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, John.
So long.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Meeting
you.
adjourned.